What if many of the beliefs you call your own were never truly yours? Every day, you're surrounded by opinions, trends, and expectations that quietly shape the way you think, speak, and make decisions. Most people believe they're acting independently, yet they often follow the crowd without ever realizing it. The desire to belong is deeply rooted in human nature, making conformity one of the most powerful invisible forces in our lives. In this chapter, you'll discover why intelligent people are just as vulnerable to social influence, how the fear of rejection silently controls behavior, and what it truly takes to think for yourself in a world that constantly rewards agreement. Because the moment you reclaim ownership of your own mind, you reclaim ownership of your future. Have you ever noticed how easily people change their opinions when they find themselves surrounded by a crowd? A person who thinks independently while alone may suddenly become silent in a group, agreeing with ideas they would normally question. It happens so naturally that most never realize it. The need to belong is one of the oldest forces in human nature. Thousands of years ago, acceptance by the tribe meant survival. Rejection often meant isolation, danger, or death. Although the world has changed, your brain still carries that ancient programming. It constantly watches for signs of approval, searching for the safety that comes from fitting in. This is why conformity is so powerful. It rarely forces you to obey. Instead, it quietly persuades you to believe that following the majority is the safest choice. Little by little, your opinions begin to mirror the people around you. You stop asking whether something is true and start asking whether it is popular. The danger is not that other people influence you. Influence is unavoidable. The danger begins when you surrender your ability to think for yourself. History has shown that entire societies can embrace harmful ideas simply because few people have the courage to stand apart. The crowd creates confidence, but confidence is not the same as truth. The moment you begin valuing acceptance more than independent thought, you unknowingly place your mind in someone else's hands. And that silent surrender becomes the first step toward losing your individuality. Losing your individuality rarely happens in a single dramatic moment. It happens through countless small compromises that seem harmless at the time. You laugh at opinions you don't truly share, stay silent when you should speak, and gradually reshape your beliefs to avoid rejection. The human mind is deeply influenced by social proof. When enough people believe something, it begins to feel true, even when the evidence says otherwise. The crowd offers certainty, and certainty is comforting. Questioning the majority, on the other hand, demands courage, and courage is always uncomfortable. History repeatedly reminds us of this pattern. Great discoveries, revolutionary ideas, and meaningful progress almost always began with individuals who refused to accept popular opinion as unquestionable truth. They were criticized, ignored, or even ridiculed before they were understood. This is why independent thinking is so rare. It requires the willingness to stand alone long enough for the truth to reveal itself. Yet conformity is not always obvious. Sometimes it hides behind traditions, workplace culture, social media trends, or the expectations of family and friends. The pressure is often invisible, making it even more powerful. The question is not whether you are influenced by others. You are. The real question is whether that influence helps you grow or quietly steals your ability to think for yourself. The answer becomes clear only when you discover the subtle psychological forces that convince ordinary people to surrender their judgment without ever realizing it. Those psychological forces are far more subtle than most people imagine. They rarely rely on threats or direct pressure. Instead, they work through the emotions you experience every day. The desire to be accepted, the fear of standing out, and the discomfort of being judged. Once these emotions take control, the mind begins searching for agreement rather than truth. You start adopting opinions because they feel socially safe, not because you have carefully examined them. Over time, borrowed beliefs become so familiar that you mistake them for your own. Modern technology has intensified this process. Every day, millions of people are surrounded by algorithms, headlines, viral trends, and endless opinions competing for their attention. The more often an idea is repeated, the more believable it begins to feel. Familiarity quietly disguises itself as truth. This is why intelligent people are not immune to conformity. Knowledge alone does not protect the mind. Without awareness, even highly educated individuals can follow the crowd while believing they are making independent decisions. True independence begins with a simple habit: pausing before agreeing. Ask yourself whether a belief is supported by evidence or whether it merely echoes the voices around you. That brief moment of reflection creates space for genuine thought. The strongest minds are not those that reject every popular idea. They are the ones that examine every idea before accepting it. And once you develop that habit, another challenge emerges: finding the courage to stay true to your convictions when the crowd refuses to stand beside you. Finding the courage to stand by your convictions is often far more difficult than discovering the truth itself. The greatest test of independent thinking begins when your beliefs are challenged by the people whose approval you value most. Very few individuals enjoy standing alone. Your mind naturally seeks harmony because disagreement can feel like rejection. As a result, many people abandon their convictions long before they have truly examined them. They trade authenticity for acceptance, believing that fitting in is the safest path. But history tells a different story. The individuals who transformed science, philosophy, business, and society were rarely celebrated at the beginning. They were questioned, criticized, and often misunderstood because they chose evidence over popularity and principle over comfort. Their willingness to think independently became the source of their greatest influence. This does not mean you should oppose the crowd simply to appear different. Blind rebellion is no wiser than blind conformity. Real wisdom lies in judging every idea on its own merits, regardless of whether it is accepted by one person or by millions. When your opinions are built on careful observation, honest reflection, and sound reasoning, you no longer need the crowd's approval to feel certain. Confidence grows from understanding, not from agreement. The moment you stop borrowing your beliefs from others, you begin reclaiming ownership of your own mind. And once that ownership is restored, you are finally prepared to understand the lasting reward that comes from thinking with courage instead of simply following the crowd. Thinking with courage does not mean isolating yourself from the world. It means refusing to let the world do your thinking for you. Listen carefully, observe openly, and remain willing to learn, but never surrender your judgment simply because an opinion is popular. This is the deeper lesson behind the law of conformity. The crowd can offer comfort, but it cannot replace truth. Real growth begins the moment you stop measuring your beliefs by the number of people who agree with them and start measuring them by evidence, reason, and experience. The strongest minds are neither stubborn nor easily persuaded. They remain open enough to change when presented with better evidence, yet disciplined enough to resist pressure when popularity replaces wisdom. That balance is the foundation of genuine independence. Ask yourself one final question: if everyone around you believed the exact opposite of what you believe today, would you still have the courage to defend your convictions? Your answer reveals whether your beliefs truly belong to you, or whether they belong to the crowd. The future is shaped by individuals who dare to think clearly when others simply follow. Every meaningful breakthrough, every lasting innovation, and every courageous decision begins with one person who chooses truth over approval. And with that understanding, we are ready to explore the next law, one that reveals why human loyalty, emotions, and opinions can change far more quickly than most people ever expect.